Hello, intrepid listener of Radio 4. How fancy are you, sitting there with your baguette and a highball thinking, who is this woman and what on earth is she saying? I'm Ashley Storrie, I'm from Glasgow, and you'll get used to my voice. And this is my almost true story. That's my name. Ashley Storrie. That's my name, that's my name, that's my name. Chapter 1. How my dad met my mother, or Revenge of the Toxic Swamp Boys. I've been told the best way to start this episode is to explain who I am, and I thought about just reading out my Tinder bio. I'm of that generation where you need to be able to give a précis of your entire being in 140 characters or less. Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a tall comedian who loves bread, fan fiction and William Shatner. I hate textured fabrics and the end of Game of Thrones. I do not sell feet pics.
Do you sell feet pics?
No! That's not actually my Tinder profile. My real Tinder profile just says, please don't murder me. When I was younger, I worked in a nursing home and mostly just stopped the residents fighting over the pink wafers, a top-tier biscuit. After lunch, the old ladies liked to tell me about the boyfriends they'd had when they were young. The handsome chaps who'd approached them at a dance hall or in the park with a bunch of flowers and a declaration of affection.
Darling, you look divine.
It is mad how different my generation's stories will be.
What happened is I posted a beautiful selfie on Instagram and he slid into my DMs with a fire emoji, an aubergine and a winky face. I replied, whap, and 3 years later we were married.
To explain who I am, I need to explain where I came from. I'm very much a product of the ingredients put in me. My parents didn't have the luxury of a swipe right love story. They had to go out into the real world to start their tale and mine. As I'm sure you well know, a meet cute is when two people meet and it's cute, and then they kiss eventually. Like in the world's worst Christmas film, Love Actually, where Hugh Grant meets Martine McCutcheon and we have to suspend our disbelief for 2 hours and buy the narrative that Martine McCutcheon is somehow fat and he's all posh and blustery and she's all sweary and then she gets harassed by the President of America. Do you know what? This wasn't a good example. A meet cute is like in Dirty Dancing, where Baby walks into the staff hut carrying a watermelon and Johnny Castle teaches her how to dry hump dance and then Jerry Orbach lends them money so they can pay for Penny's abortion. Do you know what? This wasn't a good example either. Anyway, that's the gist of a meet cute, and it's pretty much exactly how my mum and dad met, only with less dancing and more silence and criminality. My mum was 17 when she headed down to a hotspot in her local Shettleston. For those of you unaware of the area, it's a vibrant nook of Glasgow, filled with very lively characters, only marginally tarnished by the high crime rates and a wee dollop of poverty. But ignore that bit and focus on my parents. It was early 1980-something, and disco hadn't entirely died in the barrios of Glasgow. Bell-bottoms and oversized lapels were still hot, and the regional watering hole had a light-up floor and a dance competition. This bar, let's call it the Palace Bar, it's not called that but it's close enough, was owned by the notorious Storrie clan, a brood of 7 feral brothers, just like that musical where they kidnap 7 brides from a village and then give them Stockholm Syndrome through song and log dancing in the winter and then the guy from Calamity Jane is in it. Have you ever seen that film? Ashley, focus. 7 feral brothers ruled by their notorious crime-doing father George, who will become my granddad. Spoiler alert. So, they own this pub and my mum's gone to it. She's wearing her best woolen vest and trousers. My mum was very poor, even by the contextual standards of her peers. They were poor and she was poorer, and I, like most millennials, will live with the eternal guilt of not being that poor forever. But this isn't the time nor place for therapy. So there's my mum. Let's call her Janie Curry, because that's her name. Which is hilarious because she never ate a curry until she was in her 30s. Not because she doesn't like delicious food, but because she's Scottish. She's 17 and dressed in a red wool outfit with her gang of girlfriends, who all had weird nicknames like Bashed Biscuit and Sandra Three Spoons. and they're waiting in line to enter the palace bar for the disco night with the light-up floor. It's essentially an episode of Sex and the City. A gangly boy with the intensity of a young Charles Bronson and the height of the other Charles Bronson stops the girls as they try to enter the bar, where Donna Summer's version of Jimmy Webb's classic MacArthur Park is playing, but it's really weird because in the song she says MacArthur's Park.
Can I see some ID, ladies?
He asks the girls. He's a stickler for licensing regulations. Bash Biscuit and Sandra Threespoon show the strange doorman their identification, proving they are over 18. But my mother, in her wool suit, has no such documentation, for she is still only 17.
And you?
He asks her, pushing his Jeffrey Dahmer glasses up his nose. I don't have any. Her heart is fluttering, with rage, at this weird-looking boy trying to ruin her night.
Then I can't let you in.
He looks beyond her short frame at the line behind her. Next! He cries. But my mother has the height and tenacity of a young Charlie Manson. Let me in, eh? She demands.
No.
Because again, he's really into rules, and at this point his autism is undiagnosed, but with hindsight very evident. He looks her over, appreciating the frugality of her outfit, and asks a question which shocks everyone waiting to dance on the light-up floor.
Do you want to go out with me?
Aye. Mum said yes because she thought that would get her into the club night. It didn't. He made her stay outside with him. She wouldn't find out until later that he was only 15 when he did this. I think nowadays this would all be called a red flag, and people on TikTok would say that's so toxic. But back in the old days, that was how you got a girlfriend. I asked my grandpa once, how did you meet my nana? And he said, I just followed her about until she said yes. So mother has met father, and in turn his 6 brothers. I like to imagine the introduction was akin to that scene in The Sound of Music where Captain Von Trapp blows his wee whistle and all 7 of his children line up in sailor suits and introduce themselves to the nun, some in English accents, some in American accents. We don't question it. But I know it wasn't really like that. At all. My dad's family weren't the A-listers of Scottish-gun. But if you read books about Glasgow gangsters in that era, you'll see their names as a footnote when discussing the more notorious players. It really doesn't matter what level of gangster they were. Crime is crime for all that. And it's scary, irrespective of which league you play in. Mum and Dad both started working in Grandad's Palace Bar, both underage. I think the statute of limitations is up on that one, Popo, sorry. They were together for a few months, and my mother was fast learning that Dad's family were the worst kind of nasty. My grandpa, who is long dead, so I can say what I like, was a cruel man who pitted his 7 sons against each other for sport and his own entertainment. My granny had died shortly after the birth of her 7th son. There's a joke that she was bored, but the truth was she was sad and drunk and died in her bed, young and angry, leaving her sons, who, by all accounts, she never liked, to be raised in the kind of hostile environment that breeds swamp boys who all hate each other. Dad's oldest brother, who is now also dead, so I can say what I like, was the most toxic of the pack. Unwanted from birth and full of the kind of bile that brews when your mother doesn't like you. Uncle Borge, that's not his name, but it's close enough, hated that my mum and dad had found some solace in each other's company. He was jealous of a pair of teenagers because he couldn't have that. Let me try and describe him for you. He had a face like a Halloween cake. You know, all round with like shiny wee cheeks. He was shorter than his other brothers and had brown teeth like old tombstones, and he smelled like Paco Rabanne. Other alpha scents are available. He treated his girlfriends poorly but loved his dogs deeply. Once attacking a man in a park when he misspeciesed his dog as a German Shepherd, when in fact it was a Belgian Malinois, but he pronounced it Malinois, so that's funny. Uncle Borge, trickling jealousy and full of that aforementioned bitter, my mummy didn't like me, vinegar, decided to play a prank. Something mean-spirited and devised to embarrass the young lovers who would one day be my parents. Without their knowledge or consent, he and his then-girlfriend, one of the prettier barmaids at the palace, sent out hoax wedding invitations to my mother's family.
You are cordially invited to the wedding of Janie Curry,
A Protestant.
and Sean Storrie
A Catholic.
at some point in the 1980s. Please RSVP ASAP.
Oh, how the brothers Storrie laughed as they imagined their second youngest sibling go red with embarrassment, his angry wee girlfriend waving the tacky lace-trimmed parchment about her head with all the fury born of a life soaked in poverty and abuse. Their prank another little humiliation she'd have to endure. My mum and dad didn't have much in common. She liked pop songs, loud conversations and showing off. He liked cop shows, being silent and counting things. This moment in their very new relationship would show them that they did have one thing. One little thing that they shared in equal measure. Pettiness. And maybe spite. Without blinking, blushing or even sneering, my parents thanked Uncle Borge for his kind act in pushing them to do something they really should have thought about themselves. My dad bought my mother an engagement ring, and my mother told her family that she was going to marry that weird teenager she'd been dating for a few months. A Catholic priest, who it later turned out was actually an IRA terrorist in hiding, agreed to marry the mismatched pair so long as Protestant Janie gave her first child a Catholic baptism. A deal the Catholic Church would soon come to regret when I turned up with uncomfortable questions like,
If all the nuns are married to God, do they have to take turns?
or
If it was God's plan the whole time, then surely Judas is the hero.
or
Are there no paintings of Jesus having a fun time, like a picnic?
or
Was there a vegetarian option at the feeding of the 5,000? Was it just fish? Was there some jackfruit for people who don't like fish? Was there a non-alcoholic beverage option? Because some people don't drink, Father.
no, rude Jesus. Rubbish Buffett.
Do you, Janie, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?
Aye.
And do you, Sean, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?
Okay.
You may now kiss the bride.
And everyone cheered.
Yeah!
And that's the nearly completely true story of how my mum and dad met and got married out of spite. A trait which they've embedded in my DNA. For example, about 15 years ago, my father got drunk and ruined Christmas. So now I randomly phone him at 4 in the morning from a blocked number and I play Wham's Last Christmas down the line and he has no idea who or why.
Who is this?
I didn't come along for another 5 or 6 years. My mother jokes that she didn't breed well in captivity, but the truth was she was secretly on the pill.
Ashley Storrie. That's my name. Ashley Storrie. That's my name. That's my name. That's my name.
Tune in next time for How Ashley Was Born and How Our Life Became Like Bleak House, that book by Charles Dickens. Next up on Radio 4, it's a show about a man struggling with middle age in Middle England, and he's a middle child. Only kidding, I don't know what's next. Bye!